Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. This week, we're taking a look at Palantir Technologies, a company that's been making a lot of headlines lately, especially with all the buzz surrounding AI.
Palantir is certainly right in the thick of this AI surge, but as you know, that doesn't always mean a smooth ride for those who are investing.
Absolutely. And our listeners have sent us a ton of material on Palantir's recent stock volatility. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, to say the least. So let's try to unpack this and figure out what's driving these dramatic swings.
Well, we've got a lot to cover. We've got stellar earnings reports, potential defense budget cuts, and even some pretty interesting decisions from the CEO.
Okay, so let's start with the most recent quarter. Palantir's Q4 2024 performance was, well, it was pretty remarkable. We're talking a 36% increase in revenue year over year. That brought them to over $827 million.
And their earnings per share, those jumped by a staggering 75%. Numbers like that are bound to get people talking.
They did. That buzz sent the stock price soaring to a record high of $125 a share back in February. But, and this is where things get interesting, that peak was followed by a pretty steep drop, almost 30%, which brought the price back down to around $90. What happened?
That's the question everyone was asking. There were a number of factors that played a role in that decline, but one of the biggest was the uncertainty surrounding potential defense budget cuts proposed by the incoming Trump administration.
And of course, that's significant for a company like Palantir that relies so heavily on government contracts for its revenue.
Exactly. Over 50% of Palantir's revenue comes from those government contracts. A lot of that's from the Department of Defense. So these proposed cuts, which could be as much as 8% annually for the next 5 years, well, it's no surprise investors are a little worried.
Now, it's not entirely clear how these cuts will actually play out. Some analysts argue that Palantir's technology is so essential, so vital to national security, that they'll be insulated from the worst of it. But it's definitely a risk that investors are keeping a close eye on.
Of course, it's important to remember that Palantir is not just a defense contractor. They also have a growing presence in the commercial sector. They're providing data analytics and AI solutions to businesses in a whole bunch of industries.
So is it possible that Palantir could make up for any potential losses from defense cuts by growing their commercial business?
It's possible, sure, but their government work is still a big chunk of their revenue. It's not something they can just switch over from overnight.
So on the one hand, we've got impressive earnings, a dominant position, and a really fast-growing market. But then on the other, there's this looming threat of defense budget cuts. That makes Palantir a pretty complicated investment to try to analyze.
No question about it. And just when investors were starting to wrap their heads around the potential impact of these budget cuts, another development came along that just added to the uncertainty.
You're talking about the CEO, Alex Karp, announcing that he's planning to sell a big chunk of his stock.
Yeah, something like 10 million shares. At the moment, those are valued around $1 billion. Now, it's not unheard of for CEOs to sell some of their stock, but the timing of this particular sale on top of an already nervous market, well, let's just say it raised a few eyebrows.
Especially since that announcement coincided with a 9.3% drop in Palantir's stock price, all in a single day.
It's hard to say for certain whether Karp's decision was based on some kind of inside information or if it was just a coincidence, but it definitely got people speculating, and it added to those concerns about what the future holds for Palantir.
This whole situation with Karp raises an interesting question for our listeners out there who are trying to navigate the investment world. How much weight should we really be giving to insider actions like this? I mean, they're company insiders for a reason, right?
That's a great question. It's one that I know a lot of investors struggle with. There isn't an easy answer. But I think it's important to look at the context of these actions. Is the CEO selling a small percentage of their holdings, or are they getting rid of a substantial chunk? What's the general market sentiment like? Are there other things going on?
So it sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all approach to reading these moves. But it is something investors should pay attention to.
Absolutely. It's one piece of the puzzle. The more information you have, the better prepared you'll be to make good decisions.
So let's recap for a second. What have we learned so far? Palantir is a company with some pretty impressive strengths: strong earnings, a commanding position in the AI market, cutting-edge technology that government agencies really want.
But they've also got some big challenges ahead of them. The possibility of those defense budget cuts, the retail investor craze that initially drove the stock price up cooling down, and a valuation that, well, let's just say it's pretty ambitious.
Sounds like Palantir is a classic high-risk, high-reward kind of investment. So for our listeners out there who are trying to figure out whether they should buy, sell, or hold, where do we go from here?
Well, before we get ahead of ourselves, I think it's important to point out some of the positive things that have come up, even with all this uncertainty.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to focus on the negative and kind of lose sight of the bigger picture.
Like, for example, Palantir just recently got a $178 million contract to provide the U.S. Army with two AI-enabled tactical intelligence targeting access node systems.
Those are called Titan systems, right?
That's right. These Titan systems are designed to give soldiers real-time battlefield intelligence, which lets them make decisions faster and, with more information.
So even with those potential budget cuts looming, this contract win really highlights how important Palantir's technology is in modern warfare.
It does. This contract really shows what Palantir can do, things no one else can. And it shows that the Department of Defense sees a lot of value in their AI and data analytics expertise.
And even with all the recent volatility, Palantir stock has actually done pretty well over the past year. It's up 18% in just the last 30 days.
And don't forget, it's quadrupled in value over the last 12 months. So while there are definitely some challenges ahead for Palantir, it's pretty clear that the company's got some serious momentum.
It sounds like we're seeing a real tug of war here. On one side, you've got some solid fundamentals, great earnings, a growing market share, a leading position in AI, especially with their government contracts. But then on the other side, you've got these potential budget cuts, the CEO selling off stock, and a valuation that's, well, let's just say it's ambitious.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Right now, Palantir's trading at 220 times its projected 2025 earnings. That's a premium valuation for sure.
So for our listeners who are tuned in to Investing Talk podcast to get a better handle on Palantir, what does all this really mean? How do we make sense of all these mixed signals?
I think the main takeaway here is that Palantir is a company with a ton of potential, but it also comes with a fair amount of risk. It's a high-stakes investment. And whether it's right for you really depends on how much risk you're comfortable with in your overall investment strategy.
So there's no easy answer, no one-size-fits-all recommendation.
Exactly. Investing in Palantir isn't for everyone. If you're looking for something stable and predictable, there are probably better options out there.
But for investors who are okay with some volatility and who believe in the long-term potential of AI and data analytics, Palantir could be a really great opportunity.
It's really a bet on the future, a bet that Palantir can overcome these challenges and really take advantage of the huge growth potential of the AI market.
So for our listeners out there, what do you think about Palantir? Do you see this recent dip as a chance to buy, or is this the start of something bigger? Let us know down in the comments what you think. We always love to hear your perspectives.
And if you're enjoying this look at Palantir, don't forget to like and subscribe to Investing Talk podcast for more in-depth analysis of the companies and trends that are shaping the investment world.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We started with Palantir's impressive earnings and then talked about the uncertainty around those potential defense budget cuts. And then, of course, we had that interesting stock sale by the CEO.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in for any investor.
But that's kind of the name of the game when it comes to investing, especially when you're dealing with a company like Palantir that's in such a fast-paced, constantly changing industry.
There are definitely a lot of opinions out there about Palantir. Some analysts are super optimistic about the company's long-term prospects, and then others, well, they're a lot more cautious.
And that's exactly why we wanted to take a closer look at Palantir on Investing Talk podcast. We want to give our listeners a balanced and well-informed perspective.
It's not about telling people what to do, whether they should buy, sell, or hold, because the truth is nobody knows for sure what's going to happen.
Right. What we can do is give our listeners the knowledge and information they need to make their own smart decisions.
And that means looking at the good and the bad, understanding how the company works, and weighing those potential rewards against the risks.
So for our listeners who are still on the fence about Palantir, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them to do their homework. Really dive into the company's financials, look at industry reports, maybe talk to other investors.
It's all about due diligence, isn't it?
Exactly. Don't just go by the headlines or what other people are saying. Form your own opinions. And to do that, you need a good understanding of the company and the industry it's in.
And I think it's important to remember that diversification is a big part of any good investment strategy.
Oh, absolutely. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread that risk around different asset classes, different industries.
And probably the most important thing, never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Couldn't agree more. Investing always comes with at least some risk. You have to be ready for the good times and the bad.
We've certainly given our listeners a lot to think about today. Hopefully this has helped to shed some light on Palantir Technologies. It's a complex company, but a really fascinating one.
And if you found this discussion helpful, please do us a favor and like and subscribe to Investing Talk podcast. We've got lots more insightful analysis of companies and trends that are shaping the world of investing.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.